Call the meeting to order and start with a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out on a midsummer's night to participate in this meeting. Delightful that we could get 100% attendance. Our first activity will be the approval of the minutes from July 16th. They were distributed by Jerry. I'll take a motion for their approval. Is there a second? Second. Do we have any comments, changes, additions, deletions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public comment. Do we have any members of the public? Doesn't look like it.
Nobody online.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will jump right into the pension board report discussion. Again, thank you all for coming, and I'm going to turn it to Leanne for introductions and to kick us off.
Well, this is going to be very easy for me because I'm going to turn it to Daryl Pasca, who's the chair of the Pension and Employee Benefits Board, and he's going to then introduce Morgan Stanley. So he's going to start with an overview, and then we're going to go to Morgan Stanley.
Great, great. Thank you for coming, Daryl.
For having us. Hopefully we can be informative about what we're doing as the Pension Benefit Board. It's an important piece of the town, and we take our job seriously. First off, just going to run through the members. Paul Tracy has been on the board for, I'm not sure, longer than me, but his background is he's financial planning, financial analysis, and investment person. Leland McKenna is new to the board this year. He's a vice president at Middlesex Hospital. Susan Quish has been on the board for a number of years. She comes from business and was at one of the major insurance companies. Lorraine Cortese Costa has been on the board also for a number of years. She's recently retired, but is an attorney in labor relations. So she has that background. Rowena Moffat is also an attorney. She's been on the board for a number of years. And then Carl Fortuna, of course, is on the board. And I chair the board. My background is a CPA. I'm retired from the public accounting. I say actively retired because not only do I do this, but I'm also have the honor to serve as the chairman of the board for Middlesex Health. And I also am an adjunct professor at Quinnipiac Law School. I teach an accounting concepts to lawyers course, which is quite an interesting time. It keeps me active. Just briefly to summarize a little bit of stuff that I recently turned in the Pension Benefit Board's report that will be included in one report for the town. We've had, over the past number of years, 5 or 6 years, taken a lot of steps to sort of make sure that we have a good, well thought out retirement benefit program, and as well funded as we possibly can have it. I know I spoke with you probably about a year ago now about setting up a pension reserve fund, and thank you for putting that in the budget and getting it through. And as of June 30th, that is at $312,000, which will be helpful. Hopefully it's not needed anytime soon, but it's helpful if and when needed to help the volatility of how much the town may have to put into the pension plan. The board meets every month except for June and July, or say July and August and December. We hear from our actuaries a couple times during the year. But they are critical to figuring out how much money should be in the pension plan. They take all the members, they take the ages, they use their actuarial magic and say this is how much money should be in there to support the payments going forward. We also are involved with other benefits, and the town uses Brown & Brown. We meet with them again at least once a year, if not more. They just discuss and keep up to speed as to what benefits are out there and what, if anything, should be done as far as recommendations to the town. But the one that we hear the most from every month is Morgan Stanley. They're our investment advisors. And what I will do is turn it over to them and they'll walk through in the packet you have here They've got some stuff in here talking about our investment policy statement, how we decide what to invest in, our asset mix, those sorts of things, and the results of that. So as we go through it, please stop with questions, comments you might have as we go along. We're here to educate you or answer any questions or concerns that you might have.
Thank you very much.
Turn it over to Kevin.
Great. So Kevin Nichols, particularly, we are with the Center Harbor Group. I'm going to go over here. So we're with the Center Harbor Group at Morgan Stanley Consulting Services. We've been working with the Pension and Benefits Board for a long time.
Don't sit on my lap now.
Town of Old Saybrook is a very important client of ours. All right. So I'm going to go over just a little bit of the investment philosophy that we have, how we think about implementing investments for the town pension. Becky's going to kind of go over a little bit about the firm, our institutional consulting services, the resources that we provide for the Pension and Benefit Board. And then I'll get back into some of the performance figures, some of the special reporting that we do for the Pension and Benefits Board to fulfill everyone's fiduciary obligation. And obviously, if you have any questions, please just, let's make this interactive. I don't want to just, be up here presenting and doing whatever. But if you want to turn to page 4, okay, there's a little triangle at the bottom. I think you should kind of start there. All right. We really know that, the investment portfolio returns the pension liabilities, okay, that town employees have earned and that we have to pay out. And then the funding that goes in from the town, they're all affected with each other. Okay, so we don't manage the portfolio in isolation. We are well aware of the demographics of the plan, what the town is supposed to be putting into the plan on an annual basis. And our job, we feel like, is to really protect the taxpayers. Okay, on one hand, because we want to make sure that what the town is going to contribute is stable, is predictable. Okay, it's not going to be super volatile. And then we also want to protect, obviously, the people who have accrued their benefits, right? We want to make sure that we have enough cash and assets available to make sure that the pensioners get paid. And the way that we do that is we want to protect and grow the funded ratio. Okay, so that means how many assets do we have relative to the liabilities of the plan? And right now, they're, from the actuarial basis, we're at 85.2%. Okay, we want to target the actual assumed rate of return, but do that with as little risk as possible. So we want to try to make at least 6.75% over the longer periods of time. Okay, but do that in a very risk mitigated way so that we're not getting giant swings in the portfolio from year to year to year. Okay, it's really about a milder volatility approach. And yes, we're moving in the right direction. Yes, we're going to have bad years, but we're going to recover and we're going to keep growing the portfolio year after year after year. We don't have any speculative investments in the portfolio. There's no alternative investments. I want to make sure that everyone's aware of that. This is all stocks, bonds, cash. Okay, things that are liquid, things that people can understand, so that if anyone ever comes to the Pension Benefits Board, Board of Finance, whatever, we can easily explain what is in the pension. And we allocate to investment managers and third-party investment managers. Morgan Stanley does not. Morgan Stanley Investment Management, okay, does not run any of this portfolio. These are all independent third-party managers. But the managers have a history of protecting to the downside, okay, and have a lower volatility approach. And then we know that because the pension is a spending portfolio, which means that more cash is going out to pay liabilities and cash is going in from the town right now, that means that there should be more emphasis on cash flow in the portfolio, right, to pay for a lot of those benefits so that we don't take a lot from principal every year. Because when you get a bad year, okay, like we had in 2022, like we've had for the past few days here, right? When you have to spend and sell at a market bottom, it's much harder to recover from that. So the more that we can get from cash flow to pay benefits, the better off the pension's going to be and the healthier it's going to be as reported. Go ahead.
Just want to, 2 questions. So do you want to be interrupted while we go along, or do you want to just hold the questions?
Let's hear the question.
So I just quickly, the comment you just made, you says right now we're paying out more than it's bringing in.
Correct.
When did that happen?
Always.
Yeah, it's always been that way.
Always?
Yes.
Always.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the pension plan is very old, but in
I
the
see.
foreseeable past, it has been that way.
Overall, it's still growing. The number of assets is still growing.
Yeah, no,
We pay out $1.6 million, something like that, and the town puts in 700,000.
no, I thought when we were all defined benefits, more, and then the workforce is growing, we'll be paying more than.
So the fire, we talk about the town pension plan and the fire department plan every single
Right.
And the fire department plan is a young plan, it's a volunteer plan. In that plan, the town puts in more money than we spend on the pension payroll. So, you know, we don't even have to sell anything in that portfolio. In the town pension plan, our employees are active and our retired personnel is large, drawing down.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so that.
Yeah, no, I thought it was-
And we call new employees other than police since 2017
Mhm.
are in the defined contribution.
Right.
Right.
So I thought maybe that's when it switched over or something around near there, but you've been saying even before that.
Even
Interesting.
before that.
Interesting. Right, very good, thanks.
How often do you rebalance? So when you're looking at this target of 675,
Yeah.
do you do that on a 6-month basis or how?
So we don't have a frequent, I'd say, or a scheduled rebalance schedule. This is why we meet with the pension benefit board so often. We actually have very active discussions about why we're in a certain asset class or why we want to rebalance to, for example, what we've been doing over the last, let's say, probably 2-ish years, 2.5 years is adding more to fixed income. Okay, because you get more income out of fixed income finally, right? Rates weren't zero. So, you know, taking, I'd say, the pension portfolio down from over 70% equity to something that's closer to a 60-40 portfolio right now. So de-risking, but it's not something that's done on I'd say like a, you know, quarterly or annual basis. It's really discussions with the pension benefit board on how we want to rebalance and what asset classes we feel like we should be either allocating to or taking away from.
Got it. Thank you.
Great question.
I have to apologize up front. I have a ton of questions. Most of it's actually going to be related to, ultimately it's going to be related to what is the impact of liability on the pension relative to the Board of Finance, relative to this town's budget over the next, say, 10 years, 15 years and so on. Just trying to understand that. I mean, ultimately that is the goal I'm trying to understand. But I'm trying to get into having maybe some nitty gritty, right? I mean, coming back to Bruce's question, right? So this is assumed rate of 6.75. It's a little bit arbitrary in terms of you can pick, you can pick 10, you can pick 4, right? That 6.75 is the number that you pick, and you try to hit that. And then your funded ratio, presumably then, is a component of getting that assumed rate, because your assumed rate is lower than your funded ratio.
Town would have to put more in.
Your funded ratio will be less and vice versa, right? So it's all relative. So I'm just trying to figure, I mean, at some point, it's a much more complex number in terms of how all those components work, and I'm curious to understand how that
So in
works.
terms of assumed rate of return, that's something that the pension benefit board works with their actuary on. And the actuary actually runs a study every 2 years for the town, right?
No, every
And-
year. Remember.
Okay, every year, okay. And basically, you know, they'll let them know, you know, hey, you guys are well funded right now. We can actually bring that assumed rate of return down, and they've actually have brought it down over numerous times over the last few years. Because obviously a lower assumed rate of return is easier to hit, which means that the town's not going to have to put as much in, right? So that's part of what's happening. The other part that's happening, though, I want to point on page 5. You know, you can see that the funded ratio has actually gone up from 84.2 to 85.2. And that's as of last fiscal year, not fiscal year ending in 24. That's fiscal year ending in 23. Okay, so we're expecting that funded ratio to go up even more next year. All right. So the higher the funded ratio is, the more healthy the plan is. All right. The better the rating agencies are going to look at, you know, your town and say you're a good credit because your pension fund is in good order. And then the more predictable, again, that the town's budget is going to have to go into the plan. So one of the things, let's kind of just skip ahead here because maybe this is kind of helpful to show one of the things that we do. If you turn to page 12. So this is one of the special reports that we do every single year as part of our fiduciary liability on the top-hand side. And I apologize for how, how kind of little everything is, but I just want you to show how all-encompassing it is. This is the cash flow report that we do. So we use the actuarial reports to basically look at what are the liabilities that are going to be paid out, what do we think that the assets are going to grow to, and then how much cash flow are we getting from the town, what are the administrative expenses, and then what is the income that the portfolio is actually producing, okay? So all those things in conjunction really say, what's the net cash outlay that is going to end up happening in the portfolio that we'd expect over the next 10 fiscal years, right? So you can kind of see as you go that net cash flow number, it's kind of in the middle of the page. It's a negative, okay? But basically it's like negative $600,000 to $700,000 a year, okay? That has to come out of the pension portfolio on an annual basis, all right? Seems like a lot of money, all right? But when you put it into relative context of a pension portfolio that is now $28 million, all right? It's a little over 2% of the portfolio. That's it. So that means 2% of the portfolio, we have to liquidate and figure out where to raise cash from to pay for the liabilities, right? That's something that the portfolio can deal with. You see pension portfolios where that's 5, 6, 7, 10%. That's very detrimental to the health of the portfolio. So this right here shows us, what we'd expect to have to pay out, what the town is expected to contribute on an annual basis. So you can see that it's called the Actuarial Determined Employer Contribution, the ADEC. Okay, it's kind of highlighted in gray there. But you can see, that's around, 500 to 400, and that's decreasing every single year, because if we can hit that assumed rate of return every single year going forward, then the town's gonna have to put in a little bit less, plus the fact that it's a frozen plan means less people are gonna be retiring as we go on. But to your point, all those things are affected. We're well aware of that, and that's how we manage the plan.
Can I ask you a question about that? I'm sorry, we probably should let you get all the way through it and then ask questions, but
No,
for right
any
now,
other questions?
because I'm just trying to figure what you just said, because it was counterintuitive to what I understand. Right now, we have a certain number of employees that are on the defined benefit plan.
Correct.
And that number is going down. However, so therefore, the number of employees who can contribute to the plan is going down.
Correct.
Yet we have the retirees that are getting money out of the plan. And so what I heard you say is that the town's dollars are going to be decreasing over the next few years. Whereas in my mind, because we have fewer employees contributing, and we still have the same number or close to the same number of retirees benefits we have to pay, the town number ought to go up.
So that would be true if it was a very underfunded plan. But because you have a funded ratio of 85%, that's growing and getting better every year, that means that the town doesn't have to put in as much.
So the
You can also
balance
see that
The offset piece you're missing are the earnings on investment.
is the
Yes.
investments. Okay.
Yes.
All right, all right.
If we weren't 85% funded, we'd be in trouble, the number would be a lot bigger.
Got it.
and you can also see, if you look on the top row there, again, I apologize for how small this is, but it's a little over $2 million that is required for benefit payments every
Mhm.
single year.
Mhm.
Okay, the net 1.7 is, you take out the 400 that's coming up, but you can see that number basically kind of levels out at around 2.5 in 2033. And then in 2014, it goes down a little bit, and 2035, it goes down a little bit.
Mhm.
So there's a kind of an inflection point, I guess you could say, where, again, the actuary knows that this is coming up, where some people, who are on the pension plan or on the benefits, unfortunately, are going to pass away, right? They're not going to have a benefit anymore. And that's going to require less and less outflows to the portfolio. And then plus the fact, right, that we're getting more cash flow out of the portfolio from dividends and interest and earnings.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'll wait. I'm
No, no.
I'll wait.
Keep going.
George's gonna go page by.
George will always have questions. Just keep going, Kevin.
Okay, so, you know, the funding ratio is great, and I think a lot of these questions probably maybe more directed at Daryl, but it's just, you know, the funder, I'm just trying to understand, right, the funding ratio keeps going up. It's surprisingly how small amount is going up, only 1% in the last 5 years. It seems to be completely independent of the asset returns, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around. But I would also think that at some point, that funding ratio will hit 100%, but it feels like it's going to be a long time. If you just extrapolate this out, it'd be 40 years from now, which I also don't understand. But also for this plan, it is like you said, it's a finite program, right? And so if I can just take Darrow's example, right, in 2017, it was the last year that you could go in for defined benefits with defined contribution. So let's say, just to make my math easy. So let's just say 25-year-old was high in 2017, and I'm going to be very more. Let's say this 25-year-old lives to 85. Again, just make my math easy. This person will basically live for 60 years from, right? So essentially 60 years from 2017, this plan, that person will be the last person, this plan will be over, right? So it's a very finite program. And I would say pretty finite to about 2077, something in that ballpark, right? So
It's not totally finite because all the police are doing,
Right.
they're all going in a defined benefit.
Police go in.
That's
the
still-
police, oh, well,
Police
okay,
are
fine,
still-
there you go.
But in terms of the 1%, all right,
Sure.
right, there's different ways to look at it. There's actually, we have an investment return that happens every single year, and it's actually part of that. But the actuary then has to then smooth that return, okay? And what they do is they do a 5-year smoothing. So they basically do not take, 100% of the return for the last fiscal year, and they use that to determine the funding ratio. They smooth it over the last 5 years, with the first 2 years, right, being the most highly weighted. So that is why you're seeing it going up a little bit, because in 2022, it was a bad investment return, right? It was a tougher market. So that's one of the reasons that, but even with that, it's still increased, okay? And when we look at sort of, when we look at how you're doing relative to the rest of the state, I want you to turn to page 6.
Can we just say something about the funded ratio?
Yeah.
The main driver of the funded ratio, because there's lots of pieces that go into that, is the fact that the pension board has reduced the assumed rate of return from like 8% down to 6.75.
Okay.
So that happened every single year, It kind of kept it stable.
Over those 5 years, it looks like it only increased 1%.
Understood,
We kept
yeah,
that
of
at
course,
8,
yeah, that would,
it would've been much higher.
yeah, you go down, you extend it out,
down.
sure, of course.
Yeah, so
of course.
that was
Yeah,
one of them, and a whole bunch of other things go into this calculation, which you'd have to have a one-on-one meeting with the actuary really to get into all of that stuff. It's very
But it
complicated.
makes the lower assumed rate makes the hitting that rate easier.
Yes.
I don't
Now,
literally what you're
now
saying.
we'll see a
You're doing-
bigger bang for the buck. We should see, if we don't lower the rate anymore, it should really pop up pretty quick here.
So just if you turn to page 6, though, I just want to point this out, right? So this triangle on the graph here is where Old Saybrook's pension plan is,
Hmm.
right? So if you look at the average and median plan in the state of Connecticut, right, and this is run by Milliman every single year, they do a pension valuation report. It's got all these metrics in it. We took some information from it before. But you guys are doing much better than the average and the median plan in Connecticut. You're a very healthy plan. We're probably in the top 10 to 15% of funded ratios in the state of Connecticut. So that's a big success. Is really what we're trying to say. Understand.
Thank you.
Can I come back to page 12 again, that table? So I think perhaps that gray line actually maybe alleviate a lot of my questions in terms of the bottom line, in terms of what is the impact of the pension on the town's budget over time. And so if I understand the ADEC correctly, this goes out for 10 years. We're starting at I'm guessing these numbers, but about $750,000 down to about, I don't know, 360,000. Is that what those numbers are? So the projection, are these projections?
Yes, these are just projections from the actuary.
So the projection is that over the 10 years, our ADC contribution will actually decrease almost half to what it is. And so the impact actually on our town's budget actually is going to be decreasing with me.
Yes.
I'm good.
Yep.
I'm good. I'm go home.
George is happy. We like to make you happy, George.
And again, that's being even more conservative, dropping the assumed rate down. to
Absolutely. No, I
6.75.
love that too. Yeah, no, I get that one too. Oh, good.
Okay,
What other questions?
Nope.
Can I just chime in quickly? With regard to the assumed rate of return, we've gone down from when I first came in 2011, I think we were at 8 or 8.25, just so you know, for an assumed rate of return. We're now down to 6.75. Certainly, if we were at 7.5%, we'd have to put in less money, but we're at 6.75. We asked the actuary, I think 6 months ago or just recently, certainly in the last year, should we be lower than 6.75? And she was like, no, you're good right where you are. Because we want to follow that recommendation and we want the plan to be positioned well for the next 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, however long it takes. So we are where we should be right now from an assumed rate of return anyway.
Just on the bottom of page 5, too, I want to show you, they also smooth not just returns, but they smooth the market value, right? So that helps that, again, going back to the funded ratio, they're smoothing the market value of the assets. So the actuarial value is the smooth value, that 5-year smooth value, where the market value is what your assets are actually worth, right? So at the end of last month, as of July 31st, you're at over $28 billion in the plan, right? So from a asset value, overfunded relative to the liability. From a smooth actuarial valuation, still underfunded, but certainly going to be higher than the 5.2. Just going to turn it over to Becky, who's just going to go over our firm for a little bit for those of you who are really Stanley. But
yeah, I think that I get the easy part of the presentation, but if you just, we'll start on page 9. Towards the bottom of that page it's just, Morgan Stanley is a tremendous firm. It's very large on the institutional consulting side. Total on the institution is, over 600 billion in assets under management. If you'll take a look at the public funds, that's just over 61 billion of public funds, representing about 10% of the institutional funds at Morgan Stanley, being on the public side. And then in terms of the number of clients on public funds, it's 574 clients with just under 7% of it being in public funds. So our group, we work with 33 distinct entities. And so we are very much your local team. As Kevin said, the town of Old Saybrook is a very important client to us. This is a part of our business that we love, is serving municipalities, serving the pensioners and making sure that everything is going well. But just to kind of show you that, this page really just shows you the scale of the firm that we're able to leverage for the town of Old Saybrook. Really kind of bringing all those capabilities and benefits of scale locally directly to the town of Old Saybrook. One of the key benefits of having that scale is just the leader and manager analysis. So we call it GMA, Global Investment Manager Analysis. That's at the top of page 10. And it's just a tremendous resource for us. 75 analysts are dedicated to this part of the firm, really just looking at every single manager that's on our platform. There is very high bars to get them on our platform. And then there is rigorous due diligence to give us as advisors, how these managers are doing, They are ranked not only in terms of performance, but also many other factors, personnel changes, the ability to stick to their strategy, that they don't have style drift within their strategy. Obviously that, fees and everything else is all within line with the asset class that they're in. And so that is, and then something that's not listed on that top page is that because of the scale at Morgan Stanley, we get everything at the lowest possible rate that each manager charges. They actually cannot charge to their own employees a rate lower than that we charge to Morgan Stanley. That gives us great comfort, and that we know 100% sure that managers that we are recommending to our clients have gone through incredibly rigorous due diligence, not only to get on the platform, but then annually, and we have the lowest costs available to that we are providing to our clients. And then, that kind of leads into our cost of services. So for the town of Old Saybrook, we charge a client rate of 73 basis points. That includes everything. That is it's kind of listed there at the bottom. By the way, so that includes custody of assets, the trading, the investment manager fees. And so then that's something that just to be aware of in terms of transparency of cost of services. We are committed to very transparent cost of services. We have an analysis once a year about, what exactly we are charging to the town. We do this for all of our clients. And that, if anyone asks about what Morgan Stanley charges, it's 73 basis points, and that's inclusive of everything, including third-party manager costs. And so, and then you can see everything else. Monthly and customized reporting, manager due diligence, fiduciary oversight, investment policy statement monitoring, cyber protection on accounts. And it's not listed in this report, but I'll just make a short little aside that the investment that the firm is making in this whole cybersecurity, not only in terms of keeping our information and our clients' information safe, is in we lead the street, so it's in the billions of dollars, and we are very proud of that. We are committed to very good cybersecurity as well as internal efficiency and effectiveness of all of our digital platforms for our clients. So happy to talk about that. Happy to field questions as well. Yes.
How much trading do you do a year, dollar-wise average?
That's a great question. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one. But the managers basically are, independent third-party managers, so they do the trading all on their own. It's not like we direct them to say buy Apple and sell Johnson & Johnson or whatever. So I'm gonna have to get back to you on that because I don't know exactly what the dollar value would be.
It's amazing. I will say that we recently went.
But again, going back to what Becky was saying, it doesn't matter if a portfolio manager does one trade or 1 million trades a year, it's the same cost.
Right, no, I understand that. I was just curious as to.
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
What,
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that.
what the flow is.
Yeah.
Just had a couple of quick questions. You mentioned 33 entities that you work with. Are there other towns in Connecticut on that?
So those are all entities that they.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and then just the second question, that client rate you referred to, how often does that change?
So, yeah, so basically it's dependent on the asset level.
Okay.
And then, so once we hit, I'd say $30 million of assets, that's something we'll have a conversation with pension benefit board.
The pension benefit board looks at that and thinks about that. Quite frankly, just me speaking personally, I think we're lucky to be able to have a Morgan Stanley that's willing, because we're at $28 million compared to $600 billion. We're a very small fish, but we're still getting very good service and have a lot of resources there.
Appreciate you saying that.
Okay.
And then just, on page 11, you can see kind of a very traditional portfolio, about 60-40, 7.5% cash. One of the things you also want to point out here, it does say alternatives on this. Again, you don't have hedge funds, private equity funds, any of that. Alternatives here are real estate investment trusts or matched limited partnerships. Basically, like the S&P classified those as alternatives because they have alternative tax structures relative to a regular corporation. So that's all they are. So they are listed on the New York Stock Exchange. They're liquid every single day. And then you can see the returns on page 11 with even the most recent fiscal year to date or quarter date return of 2.28% as of the end of last month. As of yesterday, you're down 1.5%. Okay, so even with the 2 crazy days that we had in the market there, being down 1.5%, pretty good, in terms of downside protection when the 60/40 portfolio is down about 2.2%. So outperforming by about 70 basis points. But you can see as we kind of go back, we are either beating or right in line with that 6.75%, actually assumed rate of return as we go longer periods through. And I think the one thing I want to kind of point out too, if you look at the last 10 years, okay, we started in 2014 with $19.4 million. Net withdrawals out of the plan were $5.5 million. So that's benefits paid plus contributions from the town, okay, and employees, I should say too. We got $5.4 million in income. That's dividends and interest. That's not gain in the portfolio. That's just dividends and interest. So the dividends and interest basically paid for all of the pension benefits, which meant that then we could grow the portfolio by $9.1 million because we didn't have to take anything out of the portfolio, for lack of better. We only take out $100,000 for the portfolio over the last 10 years. So that's the strategy. The strategy is make sure we have enough cash, make sure we have things relative to pay in the portfolio to pay the benefits, no matter what's going on in the market. So secure, reliable, and growing streams of income.
You mentioned the word protection. Does that mean you use options?
No derivatives. That's a great question too. No derivatives, stocks, bonds, cash, very traditional asset classes. Yeah, no derivatives because derivatives are what's leverage, bets on directions, things like that. They sometimes can be very expensive. They sometimes can, some pensions actually, can't remember if it was Alabama or something like that. I want to say a few years ago, they had a low volatility option strategy, which basically sold call options or sold the right to buy an index at a very low volatility. And the volatility spiked, it wiped out more than their pension. So options are very dangerous. Right?
Yeah. So Kevin, on this page 11, the bottom chart, are the various colored items comparators?
Yes. Okay. Right. So we have the IPS there, the old Saybrook IPS, which you can see on page 12, what our minimum target and maximum asset allocations are for those, and they're very actually tight ranges. Right. So we do have to do some rebalancing every now and then when we go over the maximum or under the minimum. But mostly we're trying to stay around the target. And then we have just a 60/40, and then you can see the Bloomberg aggregate, the S&P 500, the MSCI EPA, which is the European stock market, and then the MSCI emerging market.
The old Saybrook IPS, which is the orange number, if you look on page 12 and you look at the target, and then you look over to where it says benchmark, they make a mock portfolio, you want to use that word, mock portfolio, and have it perform just as those benchmarks said. And that's one of the questions that I forget who asked, but someone on the Board of Finance asked. So whatever that performance is compares to what our performance is for real every single month. So this benchmark will change as all these markets change. Of course, our portfolio changes as well. And then we look at it every single month and say, why didn't we perform the same as our benchmark? Some of the time it's because of our over or under allocation positions, almost all the time. So because of our over and under, well, not all the time, because of our allocation. Sometimes it's because of the way our managers perform, and being the risk averse managers, as Kevin has been describing, they don't perform as well in up markets, but they protect in down markets. So the fact that those two numbers aren't exactly the same, or we're not outperforming them, we always take into consideration, but we understand the reason for it.
And so when the treasurer reports on that, that's effectively a blend.
Correct.
Okay.
That's one of the things that we spend a fair amount of time at every pension benefit board meeting looking at is how are we doing within the range here and what changes have made last month. Sometimes we're a few of them outside of the minimum maximum, but the question of why and what their expensive why it is and that sort of all of that.
Right, I think that's what throws us off is that, at least in my mind, I hear benchmark and then we often hear we didn't hit the benchmark. And so it's like, something's wrong, whereas it's really a whole series of other things that are.
I've been a vocal one, as Kevin would say at a meeting saying, we got our benchmark here. We did nothing, did passive investment, we would hit that.
Right.
Well, now we look at it and see what happened the last month. The return was 1.74% for the month of July, our IPS was 1.13%.
Would it,
The argument has always been protecting on the downside.
would it be easier for you, Bruce, to see a chart like this every month when I report to you?
Probably would not be easier.
Would it make it less
It's
confusing?
better to understand what the term benchmark is, because I think the term benchmark is probably what throws at least me off in the sense of, here's our goal. No, we didn't meet our goal. Here's our goal. No, we didn't, so I feel like we're always
Would you
under.
like me to give you these two graphs each month to show you so that, or is that just
I
becoming
think
too much
that's
paper?
Probably too much.
Okay,
I think now
I thought it would
better
be too.
understand the benchmark.
Okay.
I think too, just to kind of further that point, the benchmark is a series of things that become a goal. Like the real goal is to get to 100% funded and to make sure that we have enough money to pay the pensions. That's the real goal. right?
Absolutely.
And doing that in whatever, least risk method we can do is preferable. If we can beat the benchmark every single month, obviously we want to do that, but that's not, I think paramount to the success of the plan. What's paramount to the success of the plan is when we have a year like 2022, we're not going to go down as much as the S&P 500.
Mhm.
We're going to protect the downside, which then keeps that smoothing a little bit more predictable. And then again, makes the town's contribution more predictable as we go forward. Right, so we expect in a big up market, we're going to lag. We do expect that. In a down market, we should do a lot better. And that's what's happening just the first, few weeks here. Who knows what's going to happen?
You know what I think, Barbara, in reference, if we got this chart,
Once a quarter?
semi-annually,
Once a quarter?
or twice a year.
Twice a year?
But-
Okay.
But that would be a good indicator. I don't think we need it monthly, but I think being
Twice a
able to see
year.
it twice a year would be good.
Okay, we'll do that twice a year.
So, do you do an analysis as far as like next year, there'll be so many people who will be eligible for this?
So that's more the actuary that does that, but we read those reports and work with the actuary to see if there's going to be like a big slew of retirees, let's just say next year, or more than expected, right?
So is there a chart like showing?
Yes, there is. There's a chart that shows, the demo, like how old everyone is, what the expected retirement rate is going to be, and then what the expected cash outflow is going to be because of those retirees.
So is there a high point in this, like 2040 or something, or?
So I think that's it. Like one of the part on the cash flow report that I kind of showed is you can kind of see that starting in like 2033 is where it's sort of like that's where the outflow is going to peak. Let's say. And then in 2034 and 2035, they go down to that, so they do go down.
And there's not another, like 10 people coming through in a certain year in 2037 or something?
So we update this on a 10-year basis every single year. The actuary goes out, I think, like 20 years, I'm pretty sure, yeah. So
They have a chart that shows everybody's, it's like how many people are over 50, how many people are between 40 and 50. They put it in whether they're in the town or the police. So, I can show you, that's in the actuary report. And if you're curious about that, I can pull that chart and show that to you.
So with this benefit, is it transferred to the spouse?
So that's up to that's up to the individual person if they wanted to.
Right, so we have life, which you can just take it yourself, or you can do it joint with your spouse, 50, 75, 100%, or anybody, not just your spouse. But and then the actuary, you know, the monthly payment's supposed to be $1,000 and you want to share it with your spouse, well, you're only going to get 800. The actuary figures all that out.
Question about this one and probably more of a question probably related to what Brad was asking. So, from my perspective, I mean, because old Saybrook is so well funded, I mean, at this point, the last thing you were describing, we were over the lifetime of, I guess, the last 10 years, the interest being generated was almost equal to what was being paying out, right? So, bottom line, we're still well funded, and so it feels like at some point you could almost just dial down the OS, Old Saybrook IPS, right? So that, right, you can dial that down, and so the meat will, right? So to Bruce's concern, that meat would be almost nothing, right?
So part of that is true, but part of it also, we still have to hit the 6.75 a year. So it's not like we can just say, we get to 100, everything's in cash, whatever, like we got, you know, that's not the plan. The plan would be, yes, we want to reduce risk the more that we get to close to 100% funded, and we'd actually like it to be a little bit over 100% funded. That gives you actually more leeway. But yes, we would look to de-risk the portfolio even more. But you can't go 100% cash or 100% bonds, something like that. You know, even though you might feel the inclination to do that, because we still have to hit that 6.75. So if we did something like that, and then we're only making, you know, a few percent, and it's way under the 6.75, and the town has to put in more money, the funding ratio goes down, and the plan doesn't look as healthy as it was before.
One thing that raises a question of some institutions, the hospital, for instance, 5 years ago, cashed out the pension plan. It was 100% funded, paid everybody out. They had the option of rolling it into, you know, the 401k type plan or 453B, whatever it was called, all that sort of thing, or taking money, whatever. That can't necessarily be done here for several reasons. One is, we've got a lot of negotiated contracts that require pension, and that have to be negotiated out. But B, municipalities, if you didn't have a pension plan, you'd be at a disadvantage of hiring people too. Everybody used to be a policeman or got to work at a municipality. You're looking for a pension plan. That's part of it. You know, hospitals, manufacturing companies, all that kind of stuff. Most of them have cashed out their pension plan if they had the money in there to do it. So they didn't have the volatility and that sort of thing. So that's there. The best we can do is be as near 100% funded as we can to minimize the annual amount that we put in there and still hit. But to do that, you also have to continue to hit the 6.75 or whatever your targets are, that sort of thing too.
So I think you may have answered perhaps what I was going to ask next. And so I didn't appreciate that the police department will continue, because the contract will continue with a defined benefits plan. But my understanding is town employees, new one, since 2017, all those people are now on defined contribution. So the last person was on defined benefits 2017. And so the ones who, not the ones who retired because they're already getting annuitized, but the ones who are getting close, and like you said, we need to have to go back to the contract. But in an environment of high interest rate, which we are now, it's my understanding that offering them a lump sum payment in a high environment is beneficial to them. It's also very beneficial to the town as well. So you pay them out, and so you basically just take them out of the liability of the books in perpetuity, essentially, right? And so it will cost more, but they're out. And so you know, it may cost you $1 million or 27 million, but then you don't need 27 either, right? That person is out. So
yeah, that's possible to do. I don't know how you carve that piece out, or how many are in contract or not, and all all that sort of thing is pretty,
Right.
I know in the hospital, it's a 2-year process to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah. But
We
it's,
had no negotiated contracts.
I see. But it could be large amount of money that we're talking about, especially in a high interest rate environment. It could be a lot of money.
For the individual,
I'm sorry?
Right.
for the individual.
In the town.
Right, and that
You
would
paid them
deplete,
less.
that would deplete our pension plan. If you paid out all the town employees that are still left in the defined benefit plan, it would be a huge amount because you'd have to pay them, $300,000, whatever it is, like you have to pay them a lot of money to get, and that would bring our balance down, then we'd be underfunded, and then we'd still have the police. I mean, it would be a huge financial transaction that could go either way for the town and either way for the employee.
I wasn't actually thinking about paying the people who are still working. I'm much thinking about if I was a town employee and I'm going to retire this year, I can either annuitize, what is the term that they might
Amortized.
yeah, or take,
You cannot take a lump sum.
because it's not
It's not allowed in the
but if
pension.
we somehow, I don't know how to get there, but if we got to the point where an employee that had a choice in a high, my understanding, but in a high interest environment, a lump sum payment will cost the town less over the life.
That is true, but the employees being the one making the choice would wait for the rates to go really low as far as.
I think it would go the other way.
Yeah.
If I were the employee, I'd
Yeah.
want to, the town would be better off if it's a low interest environment. But if it's high interest environment, I'm the employee, if you're gonna buy me out, I want a lot more money. Because I'm gonna figure 7% interest, whatever, versus
Time
2%.
is zero, it's when it's at zero.
A number of years ago, the town of West Hartford was in the papers and all this kind of stuff. They did something where they tried to fund the 100% of their pension plan when the interest rates were really low. They went out and issued a bunch of bonds and put the money into their pension plan. I don't know, I haven't seen anything since then. That's, again, it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago when that happened. But that was interesting. What they did is they took it sort of off their pension books and now they put it on there as debt for the town. It was a low interest rate. Somebody figured that out and said, we're better off doing that, taking the debt at lower rate.
So that plan was 50% funded when they did that. I think it might have been under 50% funded, there's a pension obligation box to try to make up the rest. And we were still on the hook for the liability. Now the town's on the hook for the liability and the pension plan's on the hook for the liability.
It's really long.
Just going back to their point, the reason why you wait for interest rates to go down to zero is because the present value of liabilities is below the future value. When it's zero.
That's on the Titanic.
If it's a high interest rate, then the present value is worth a lot less than the future liability. So they'd actually make more by waiting for rates to go to zero.
For the employee.
Yeah.
But for the,
Yeah, but just, you know, we've also
I
seen.
want to find,
So
I want to finance.
Clients, back in the, I think it was like in the mid-90s, they did what you were saying, and the problem was they had a lot of people retire all at once.
Yeah.
All took lump sums.
Yeah.
Because the pension plan went from being 90% funded to 60% funded
Yeah.
very quickly.
Yeah.
And it could be even worse than that, depending on how many people will retire at once. So you can get these sort of like weird anomalies where all of a sudden now your plan is way underfunded and it creates all other sorts of problems for the Board of Finance, the town, going out to bond, and things like that.
I think from our perspective of the Pension Benefit Board, we're in good shape as far as funding, and we're going in the right direction. We're relatively conservative in our assumptions. 6.75 is well,
Sure.
125, 150 basis points lower than it was 5 years ago. And, you know, we're hitting our returns and we're doing pretty well with that.
Right. Can I ask 2 questions? One is our benefit plan have a COLA or no?
No,
No. So we know what it is. It's not growing. Okay. Number 2, totally off the wall, but just a question really relative to Morgan Stanley Services. And that is, so as we now have a number of employees that are in the defined contribution plan, does Morgan Stanley provide any assistance to those employees
Yes, we do.
for?
Yes.
So we do.
Could you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, so we, first of all, we do consulting on a plan. So make sure all the investments are of high quality. There's a good amount of choices for each one of the employees. We do employee education. Okay, so anytime anyone has a question about, how much should I be saving? What are my, goals for saving, things like that, we can talk to them. And then we do one-on-one meetings with any employee that wants to work with us. And we do outreach, I'd say pretty much every 3 or 4 months for people that have not, spoken with us. Hey, we're going to be in town because again, we're in town basically every month. Would you like to meet with us? We just did a big thing with the police department. Like in the fall, and we do that basically annually. We talk about the 457 fall away plans. But yes, we help with that as well.
And what's really nice about Morgan Stanley is that the provider that we had prior to this wasn't allowed to give investment advice. So the employees could just pick whatever they wanted to pick. And
It's the Wild West.
Yeah, but we're thinking about our employees too, and to have people that can actually consult with them and say, I think you should think about this type of an asset allocation. It's very beneficial for employees. Plus we got a lower price too.
There you go.
We get periodic reporting, also reporting statement, what's out there. Yeah, 150 pages.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Recently on that, from their compliance standpoint, here's all the options, and here's who's invested in what. And not surprisingly, majority of the stuff people are in retirement date plan, retirement date funds.
Target date funds.
Target date.
2035, target date funds, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So we're fiduciaries for both the defined contribution and defined benefit. Okay, and we take our fiduciary responsibility very seriously and make sure that we are providing, the right choices at a competitive cost and providing all the resources necessary to help town's employees, get ready for retirement. That's the most important thing, is they have to have success in their savings for their retirement. And that's what helps the town, and that's what helps, them as well.
Okay, is there more that you would like to tell us tonight?
More questions?
Okay,
Got it?
I just wanted to make sure we were getting through the presentation. So we're through what you wanted to.
Well, actually, it brings up to a point that you had the same topic that you were brought up. And so I'm going to do something that I hate when other people do this. I'm going to bring up a chart that Leanne had provided months ago. And so obviously you guys haven't seen this, but it's this chart here. And you can see that this is essentially, the blue bars are the defined benefit contributions from the town, and then the red bars are defined benefit contributions to the town, and the red bars are the defined contributions to the town. And so I don't quite understand how that defined contribution works, but we have to pony up to their form 503, whatever it is, that they have to put in. And
So the philosophy behind that is that the defined benefit amount is not set in stone.
Right.
Okay, and you can see that we have a strategy to reduce it over time, which is a good thing. The defined contribution amount is going to grow, and then it's going to level off for those. Maximum 8%, and if we have more, whatever the union's negotiations are, it could be less, it could be more, but it's going to be about 8%. The defined benefit plan, when we were more underfunded, could be like 16% of that payroll versus the 8% of payroll. So we have devised a plan that the pension board has done a great job. I want to give the pension board lots of credit because they've really done a great job in setting up that plan and fixing the cost for the town for the defined contribution, while at the same time working on our long-term liability, looking at where we are for this budget cycle, but also over 10 years, bringing it down to 300,000. I mean, that's really, really very smart in both types of retirement plans for both sets of employees that are in both of those programs. It's really, and I'm glad that we got to see that at this board that we're, what has happened. So thank you for bringing that chart up.
Right, and so it's the blue bar, right? Initially, that was causing me a little bit anxiety, right? Because it ended at 2025 at 700,000 and I didn't know where it was gonna go just now, but
Yeah.
he just showed me.
Me with your hand.
I'm sorry, it just went all the way down. like-
2035.
Exactly, right? No, it's very nice. That's, yeah, which is why. Thank you so much.
Just told him the fingers at the end, so it's more.
Oh,
But
they're not blue.
But the red bars, it's whatever the return, I mean, we're not responsible for. It's whatever they get, unfortunately.
That's just the amount that the town contributes, and then whatever they invest in Morgan Stanley, we don't know.
Did you say you thought we were in the top 10 to 15%
Per funded ratios in
Yeah.
the state, yeah.
of all municipalities?
All municipalities, there's 179 different municipalities in the state. Some of them are in the state plan, right? But most of them are independent of that. I think you're, I'd say you're in the top 15%. Well above the average of the community, so.
I was talking to Leanne earlier today. I just asked you the question that one of the issues that came up in the last year relative to the state's pension plan and investment was the Yale study that said you guys have been doing, you're returning, but your return isn't nearly as good as, if you've just been in the S&P or whatever. Do you guys do, or does the pension board do some kind of either annual or some type of review to be able to say, not only are we getting the returns we're getting, but those returns are in the top 10% or whatever they consider?
Yes. So we do a public funds like nationwide study. We do that on pretty much an annual basis where we can look at, public funds nationwide of all different types of sizes and then rank them relative to where the pension fund is.
Mhm.
The last time we did it, which is the end of last year, for the 5 year, I think, and for the 12 month, you guys were like basically the top third of 33%. Okay,
So our investment managers are doing a good job.
so the plan's doing a good job. That's
Yeah.
really what it is. And this is also, take into account too, that a lot of these larger pension plans have a ton of alternative investments. And they don't have to mark every single day like you guys do, right? So their market say, and I think a lot of people know this, like private real estate, or whatever, the market say, you're getting 100 cents on the dollar, and when you go to sell it, they're like, oh, we're only gonna give you 80, right? So it's kind of a little, but you're all in, no alternative investments, so to be in the top third.
So you'll share that with us when you get that.
Yes, it's usually comes after June 30, September, we'll probably get the they
Pretty
report
good
start
lag.
coming out.
Get it.
Yeah, I understand.
But we will get that. for you.
Great. Any other questions that we have? Thank you so much.
No,
I
thanks
really
for the
do
time.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions,
Thank you very much. Appreciate this.
If you have anything, please reach out to us. Our information's right there.
And we keep being invited to the Thursday, 8:30 in the morning meeting, so we'll.
Invited you and you don't show. It's too early for them.
Start working.
Well, some of you are working.
So we're going to move forward. Carl, are you still with us?
8:30 meeting.
I am.
Okay.
Very much.
Good night. See you in September.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your summer, Becky.
Thank you.
So we're moving on to the discussion of the appropriation for the registrar's budget line.
Yep.
And it's really picking up from the last meeting, and I think it was
Oh,
Paul
yeah.
who kind of right at the end of the meeting said, oh, by the way,
Yeah.
can we even do this? And so that
Yeah,
created a research question that Carl got involved in. And why don't we hear about where things are at this point, Carl?
It seems to me that for elected officials on a 4-year term, the only way you can raise salaries is via town meeting or referendum. It can't just be a Board of Finance approval. So, we could, in theory, put it in the budget next year, but they're actually completing their terms in January. Both registrars are. So, I guess the recommendation would be if the board is, so you can't change the salary unless you do it through that method. could you pay them for extra hours? Does that violate the spirit of the law, but maybe not the letter of the law? So in other words, right now you have a early voting going on between two Republican senatorial, national senator candidates that would vie against Chris Murphy. They're logging the hours, and then of course in the presidential they're going to log the hours, and quite a bit of hours that were unexpected when the statute was written the way it was written. So they are going to be working a heck of a lot harder than they've ever worked, and more than the statute ever anticipated they would work. But if you want to adhere to the statute, I would say you can't raise their salary, but perhaps if the registrars come in at a later date and say, hey, we work these extra hours, would the Board of Finance be willing to compensate us for that? That may be something that might be more allowable. Bruce, I sent it to you too.
Right. Would, if that happened, is that then something that ultimately goes to town meeting?
I mean, probably the safest way to do it would be to take it to a town meeting. That would probably be the safest thing to do and explain it, just like I've explained it, that they were being tasked with something that was not anticipated when the legislature wrote the law. So, we add to budgets. The Board of Finance does have authority to make additions to budgets during the fiscal year. So in theory, I suppose you have the authority to do it once. In theory, I suppose we could do something like that. Or I could get a legal opinion on that to see if that would be appropriate. But the fact does remain that they will be logging a lot more hours than they certainly ever signed up for.
Yeah.
By the way,
Treated as a stipend.
See, I think this is all a matter of terminology, stipend versus salary versus,
well, they're not, I wouldn't say they're getting, Leanne, would you say stipend? I would say salary.
Yeah, we call it a stipend, but really it's a salary, and we take the amount that they're budgeted, divided by 12, and give them a check once a month.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this extra
It's
curricular activity.
Okay.
They say
So what
if
we're
it's
doing,
100 hours, and it's, well, whatever the hours are, times X amount of dollars, we're gonna pay a stipend this year because it's a presidential election year, and it's X amount of dollars. And to me, it would be justified. I mean, the flip to that is, you got these people working a lot of hours, but we're not paying them.
right.
George?
I didn't bring it this time, but I think the last meeting you had, I think it's the finance director put out a sheet where each department is broken down in terms of their current expenditure and whether they're under or over budget to whatever is asked for or whatever approved. If I remember correctly, and I think you tried to explain it last time, and I didn't quite understand. I meant to follow up with you. Those numbers, but right now, if I remember correctly, the what is this group called? Registrar voters. They were already $8,000, had spent $8,000 more than what was budgeted for.
Into 2020 fiscal year, in 2024, fiscal year 2024, not this fiscal year. And the registrar of voters also has what we call poll workers. And those are people that come in, they're paid an hourly rate, and, we could classify them as a poll worker, because, I don't see why we couldn't do that. And those extra hours were wages that we paid to poll workers to
Would it be
support all
considered
of these.
a poll worker manager?
Poll worker what?
Manager?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're pretty much in this original, action item that went to the finance board was to just find out what hours they're working and pay them $25 an hour.
They essentially are poll workers.
Yeah.
That's what-
Can we pay them as such?
And we could. should
In addition?
Them as such.
Yeah.
That's what our,
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me what we did in the budget for 2025 was we anticipated the early voting. And so we bucked up the budget for the poll workers for the early voting. What we just didn't do was something for the registrars. So, I mean, I think that I'm guessing there's a mood around this table that $8,000 that came as a result of your analysis, we need to put the right name on it and then make that available to them. I mean, I'm not sure what the right name is at this point, but I think that to be.
Working at the polls, they're poll workers.
Yeah.
yeah.
So one way to handle it is let everybody work, pay everybody for their hours, including the registrars, see where it ends up. It won't go $25,000 over their budget. They can run over $8,000 if need be.
Yeah, I think, Megan.
So I'm in full support of paying them for all this extra work. My question is, when we talked about their election year and that whole cycle, are we talking about like SEEC, like, state election law issues that we're concerned about? Or is this really just, okay.
Nope, the SEEC would not apply to this.
Okay.
That's more for campaigns and raising money and those types of things.
Okay, George.
So, I mean, let's see if I understood what you just said, Carl. You're just saying, let's not do anything, let them just
Right.
work, pay them because we have to, and then they'll go over the budget and we cover anyway, and just call it a day.
Well, I think we have to tell
They
them.
need to know that.
Sorry?
I think we have to tell them because they're not currently putting in timesheets, as it were. They're basically working off a salary saying they're
They need to
getting,
track it.
1/12 of $8,000 or whatever that stipend is. So we have to say, look, you are for the purposes of the primary and the presidential election. We are going to pay you an hourly rate as a poll worker for this period of time. That's effectively.
So, yes, the decision, I think, at some point will be, what are we going to pay the registrars of voters? So,
Right.
Right.
So let me go to that for just number one, we'll have more information after this, this process. We have the annual town meeting in November. Could we, as part of the annual town meeting, set the new salary for the registrars so that when new registrars come in January 1st or whatever it is, it's their new term, and then that kind of meets what Paul was talking about. I mean, it seems to me, as long as we do something prior to the term beginning, that can then kick in when the term begins. But it sounded to me that you said that we would need to go to town meeting to be able to do that.
So I would say for the next budget cycle, I mean, from January to June 30th, it's going to be relatively quiet for the registrar of voters. So I would say for the 26 budget, the board should deliberate over what they feel they should pay registrars.
Yeah, but if we do that, then going back to the statute, we can't raise their salary midterm. We have to raise it and then the new term starts the new salary. So,
But we go through a budget process every year and we go to referendum, which is just like a town meeting. So we are in effect having their salaries approved every year. Doesn't say that you can do it. It doesn't say that you cannot do it more than twice or once. It says that you have to go to a town meeting in order to do it. Correct, Carl?
Right.
All right. So if every year we raise their salary and every year we go to a budget referendum and it's in the budget, then that's okay. I think
And there's not going to be a vote before
But they're
that.
elected officials.
yes.
I thought you couldn't raise their salary once they're elected to a certain position for a certain salary, as long as they're in office.
Carl, I don't
No,
know.
John, I think-
If you go to town meeting, it's okay.
Right. I think that if it's a town meeting or budget referendum, it can be done.
right, I think that's the exception.
That's the
in vote.
exception.
That's the
That
exception.
is.
law.
That is the exception.
As long as we have our legislative body as a town meeting, then
Yes.
we can make that change.
Elected officials of towns where the legislative body is a town meeting. Or that is the exception, it doesn't go on, it just explains
Right.
what it is, that if you can do it through town, you can raise the salaries through town meeting.
Okay, so we can create the budget next year at the, whatever we decide is the appropriate salary level. Take it to town meeting and then we've met the requirements. And in the meantime, we'll pay the current registrars as poll workers for the primary and the presidential election.
Okay,
Do we need a vote on that?
Do you need what?
Do we need a vote on that?
I don't think you do.
Okay, we just have an understanding. I'm sorry, John, you had a question?
No, just for interesting information on the way up, I asked them how many people voted today.
Great.
When I came.
I'm
it was
30,
four.
it was 3.
You're gonna get Brad started on us here, so let's
Yeah.
keep moving. Move
I
on.
voted today. I was number 5.
I'm gonna go vote tomorrow. Well done, well done. All right, Carl, thank you very much for doing that. Thanks for the research.
that's right.
And on the next item, we're still with you as the select board report.
So one of the, I'll go over just a few things. I know, I love here, by the way, I love the pension board. We have
I do too.
we just have a really highly qualified, deliberate board. They do great work. Leanne, of course, leads the charge with them. Daryl Pataska probably rused the day he met me. It was the Lutheran Church on Great Hammock Beach Road had done an addition to the like a kind of a community room, and I was invited as first selectman to come over, and I said hi to a few folks. We sat down for lunch. I sat down next to Daryl. I'm talking to Daryl. I'm like, God, this guy would be great on one of our boards or commissions. He's an unaffiliated voter. I looped him in, and he's been chairman of our pension board for quite some time now. So I'm sorry, Daryl, but it's been wonderful having you as a volunteer.
Glad to be able to give back.
We love
Um,
Well,
so-
and Carl, good appointment too with Leland, by the way. I know
Well,
Leland.
that was
He's
a
great.
recommendation by Daryl. And Daryl mentioned it to me. I know Leland and his wife, and I said, there's no way he'll have time to do this, but he said yes, thankfully.
Yeah, that's great. He does a lot of volunteering for the community between this and baseball and basketball, and he's great. So
They're a great couple. They really are a dynamic couple. A couple things. We received KERMA, which is the LAP insurer and workers' comp insurer for the town, and about 240 public entities in the state of Connecticut. I'm chairman of the KERMA board at the moment and chairman of their investment committee also, but they did almost every year they do a members equity distribution. It's a member-owned organization. This year was a little less than it normally is. It was $17,000 approximately. Last year it was zero because we had several large losses on the liability side. But this year we're back to a members equity distribution. So that is something that Leanne categorizes as miscellaneous income generally to the town. But we received that check last week. Just thought the Board of Finance should know that revenue did come in. Couple things. You're going to this was brought to my attention today. We have the library, as you know, is looking to raise $1 million in funding for their renovation project. In fact, they're somewhat required to do that. They received a $2 million grant, and they are required to raise at least 50% of that from non-municipal sources, in addition to other municipal sources. So they're looking to do a fundraiser. They're looking to do multiple fundraisers, and they have hired someone to act as a professional fundraiser for them. And currently, she's being paid from the Friends of the Acton Library. I spoke to the library director today. She does not feel that there'll be enough money coming through from the Friends that ultimately the Board of Finance may have to talk about additional funding for the fundraiser. The good news is, by the time this first $10,000 runs out, we'll have a pretty good idea of how successful the library is being at raising money. And I think we'll have something to judge the next, if we are going to fund the fundraiser a little bit more money. I think we'll have a pretty good idea of how successful the fundraising is going in town. So I'm just kind of putting that out there for future thought. It may come to this board, it may not. It depends on how, if we have several large contributions. I am working on a large contribution. The library director and I met along with the architect with someone who we're hoping will make a substantial gift. We'll see where that goes. I haven't heard back yet. So we may be able to end the campaign sooner rather than later, or the campaign may go on for more than a year, at which point we may need additional resources to help raise money. But a lot of good ideas. You're talking about raising a significant amount of money. So it was a good idea by the library to bring somebody on to actually do some professional fundraising. That is not anything that I'm looking for feedback on at the moment. Just telling you that that is happening right now. And please, if you're so inclined, donate to the library. Kind of dovetailing on the pension discussion that you just had, something that I think was raised at a Board of Finance meeting, if not, it was raised by your chairman, was to talk about maybe the highlights of the police department contract settlement that was reached and that has been signed by all parties and filed with the town clerk. So just so this board knows, all our union contracts, and everybody, you can hear me okay? I'm not going in and out, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All our contracts, union contracts, are filed with the town clerk. So if you want to go, I mean, obviously you can talk to me, but if anyone in town ever has any questions, they can go to the town clerk's office and say, I want to look at the dispatcher contract. I want to look at the support union contract, and they can do that. So, little breakdown. First of all, I'm just going to jump to the pension part of this. So we, one of the proposals that was immediately made in the first session by the union in the police negotiations was pension enhancements. And, we expected a lot. We expected it, and we got it. And they asked for quite a bit. What we did behind the scenes is we worked with our actuary, and we did that not through any documentation. We really did it through our lawyer, and we did it on Teams meetings so that it was not really anything that was discoverable to the other side in negotiations. And that's a strategy that everybody uses. If you don't want to leave a paper trail, don't. And so one of the things we did, and we talked with Becky Seelman at Milliman, was lowering the amount of years that you need to serve as a police officer. So right now, 25 years is basically a standard career at the police department. Some officers work more, some work less. And what we've heard about for many years is 20 years for a police officer to serve 20 years, not 25 years, and out is a bad thing. And it was interesting because Becky came back to us and said, it's not necessarily a bad thing. They're accumulating less of a pension benefit. And as long as you're budgeting for it and you're getting significant contributions from the police union members and the town is putting in their contributions, it can work out just fine. And then another area we focused on was increasing the contributions from the police officers. So here's what we did. The pension enhancement to the police contract is police officers can work 23 years and be fully vested. So if a police officer comes in at age 20 and he retires at age 43, he is getting a full benefit. What he is doing so is eventually paying 8% as opposed to 5% in his contributions. So in fiscal year 25, police officers will be contributing 6% of their pay, not 5% as it has previously been for many, many years. In fiscal 26, it'll be 6%. No, 7%. It goes 6, 7, and 8 over the next 3 years. What that does is it gives us about $25,000 extra per year in contributions from the police officers who are contributing to the pension plan. The calculation we ran on this is what is the new benefit to the police officers going to cost the town? And basically, in a worst case scenario, at any point in the next 15 years, it will cost the town about $80,000 more at any point.
A reduction of 2 years.
Say that again, Bruce.
A reduction of 2 years, 25 to 20.
Reduction of 2 years. And oh yeah, and we also I'm sorry, I'm leaving out a big part. A police officer who does that will gets, so if an officer makes $100,000 a year, the pension will be based off $112,000. So it's an extra 12% kicker on the pension, in addition to a reduced number of years needed to qualify for full pension benefits. So we ran that through Becky up at Milliman, and we ran a bunch of different scenarios with her up there. There's many ways to make a pension enhancement to for the police officers, and many towns do it differently. Many towns do cost of living increases. We didn't do that. Many towns do include overtime and all compensation. We didn't do that. So what we did is we capped it at 12% over their basic salary would be pension eligible, and they can work up to 23 years and get that full benefit. So Becky Seelman ran the numbers, and as I said earlier, the worst case scenario is it peaks at about $80,000 more. That would be our actuarially required contribution. Well, the good news is for the town is we are actually overpaying into our pension for fiscal 25 because Becky actually told us we could put in a little bit less, and it was a decision that we chose not to do that at the moment. But when we also increase the amount that the officers are contributing from 5% to 6, 7, and 8 over the next 3 years, that adds about $25,000 to $26,000 a year that they're contributing to the pension. So in 3 years, we'll be collecting $80,000 more into the pension. So really, it was good for the officers, a good pension enhancement, which was definitely a focus of the negotiations. And as many of you know, a focus of the chief's my department is on fire letter from last July. I think we did well on the pension. I think we gave the officers a good pension enhancement, but we also protected the pension plan and where we're going with full funding. So on that, I'm going to let Leanne chime in if she'd like to, because I don't know if I stumbled over any of that.
So no, you didn't stumble, but in, the pension would go up 73,000. Then it comes down because the officers are contributing more, 56,062, and then it goes back up from there because of salary increases. So Yes, we gave them a better benefit, but because we're asking them to pay more to the pension plan, it kind of narrows, comes down a little bit and becomes more stable over time. So, to a very large extent, their contributions up to 8%, once they hit 8%, have done a big dent in offsetting the ultimate increase to police officers. The other thing that I would add too, Carl, is that, you know, this assumes that they're all going to work for 20 years.
Right.
And when we have turnover, and then every time that they do these demographic changes, it probably won't even be that much. So these are like these worst case scenarios, which the actuaries always do anyway, but, you know, it's not going to be that bad, I predict.
And as page 12 of the report from Morgan Stanley just showed us, we've got room.
They didn't run that. Yes, we have room, and that's not included in their report. Just
Right.
so it's-
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just it's an interesting fact of life.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, the pension enhancement is not going to materially affect the pension plan. And
Right.
that is one of the things I went into, and when we gathered together and we ran different scenarios as to what we wanted to do for a pension enhancement. I was pretty firm, and maybe it's not good, but I was pretty firm on not having a COLA. And I know that is a popular benefit, but we did not put in a COLA. And I don't believe what we've done is going to be particularly helpful to the other unions. So frequently what will happen is when you give extra sick days or you give extra vacation days to one union, the next union that comes in to negotiate says, well, you gave the support union that, or you gave the dispatchers that. We want that too. What we've done here, I think, does really not materially affect the negotiations for the support union, which we're currently in, and we have several more sessions scheduled. Just so you know, the raises for the officers were 3% per year. Quite honestly, our officers are paid pretty well. We are definitely middle to higher middle of the pack when it comes to comparing them to other towns, from Middletown to Brantford to East Lyme. But the raises were 3%. If you were to look at average raises across the state right now, you'd see that they're anywhere from 2.75 to 3.5. So I think we did okay on that. And you know, I'm happy to bore you with a bunch of other details. But like, for instance, you know, sometimes people get paid, or employees get paid for having a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree. So we did increase anybody who has a bachelor's degree from $500 to $700, and an associate degrees from $250 to $350. The material effect on the budget is $5,000. The clothing allotment was increased from $100 to $500. The effect on the budget is $2,300. However, we also moved on health insurance. We moved to what we call the prior authorization for PT, OT, I think speech, PT, OT, and there's one other something T. I forget what it is. But that saves the town $10,000 a year. We did a little movement on health savings account contributions from the employee. We lowered it slightly, a $2,000 savings. So we, you know, I think everything else was, other than salary and pension, was kind of, you know, just moving on the margin a little bit, nothing overly significant. Leanne did a nice summary of this. I'm happy to go through the contract, you know. I mean, I don't think we want to go through the contract line by line. So
No, I appreciate you doing that. I just think it's important for us, particularly if we're, you know, that's the biggest group of people. It's just important to know, and I appreciate you guys putting that together. George?
oh, go ahead. Sorry,
A
George.
quick question. So, I don't know very much about how the police pension gets paid, but when you're saying that contribution goes up, what is the percentage of the salary if the needs to be paid by the pension? Because I assume that the complement of that 8% or 5 to 8% is paid by the town. So is it 100% of the salary gets paid, or is it 20% of the salary and we make up the rest?
So, the employees pay 6%, 7%, then 8%. And then, when we're having the pension discussion, there's three sources of income that go into the pension. One is what the employees pay, and that's set in stone. Second one is what the investment portfolio earns, and, you know, if it earns above 6.75, that's good for the town, because the town pays whatever we need to make up. And so it's not based on an employee's salary, because an older employee, you know, an older 2-year employee, their contribution or their actuarial piece would be much higher than a 25-year-old 2-year employee's contributions. It's, you can't say it's based
I
on.
see. Got it. I see.
So-
Okay.
So we don't, yeah,
Okay.
it's about what does the town owe when they take everything into consideration?
But ballpark ish is, do you know what the range is?
So I'd have to, I think our average pension, salary is like about 6.3 million or something like that. So I'd have to take what the ADEC is and divide it by that.
Okay.
And I'll do that for you, but I don't have to.
It's a math problem.
Yes.
Carl, can I, another question, when you hit the health, I didn't hear whether do the police pay a portion of their health?
They do.
And did that change?
It did very slightly.
Okay, fine.
It changed, I can tell you that exactly. So the cost share went up minimally, like not even worth talking about.
That's fine.
It goes from 15 to 15.5%. So when we speak with Brown and Brown, our health and our benefits consultant, they've always told me that the cost share was less important than the health savings account funding, which we went to many years ago, to health savings account rather than a traditional insurance plan. So the funding now is the town contributes. So if it's a single and there's a $5,000 deductible, the town pays 40% of that deductible per year, and that moves down to 37.5%. So that is where the savings come on the health plan, according to our health benefits person.
Okay.
It's
Carl, do
more-
you have other issues you want to bring up?
Yeah, it's more important to, what I'm saying, it's more important to drive down the HSA contribution on the town part. Yeah, one other thing I want to bring up, I know it's 8 o'clock. So Jennifer Donahue is probably going to come before this board, maybe in September, with a holiday lighting proposal. And I think it's a great idea. What we've been trying to do is have this Starlight Festival. It's around the holiday, the hero tree lighting. We do stuff on Main Street. It's not exactly what we used to do on Main Street, but it's kind of like a community festival in the winter, other than the Torchlight Parade, which is an entirely different event and somewhat inexplicable to people. But Jennifer would like to put before the board a holiday lighting improvement recommendation. It's a little preliminary right now, but she's basically recommending up by Saybrook Home, a lamp post with a lamp lighter and a 12-inch lighted tree. And then on the town green, maybe a sailboat, a lighted sailboat or a lighted lighthouse. And then some other lighted garlands and bows all over Main Street. And it's a 3-year plan that she has put together. And it's about $15,000 a year that she would be asking for as an investment and about a $5,000 maintenance budget per year. So it's a good idea because it's winter. We want to draw people to the town. It's good for our merchants. Obviously, it's holiday time, so I thought I would just mention it. Again, no action needed at the moment, but she will be coming to you. I'm encouraging her to come before the finance for financing. However we do it, through capital non-recurring or through surplus or however the board chooses to do it. I'd like the board to seriously consider what EDC and what Jennifer is recommending, just because I think it's a great idea for the town. And I think going from what we had to what we have now has really spruced up that holiday weekend where we have the Starlight Festival. I think Jennifer and Heather McNeil and others have done a super job kind of with the community and the community spirit that it fosters. So that's about it.
All right, thanks. Any questions for Carl? We will move on. Any liaison reports that people have?
I'll mention one quick thing. Parks and Rec, for those who maybe don't know, John of Paradise is no longer in his role as assistant director. They did hire someone new that started, so I haven't had a chance to meet with her yet, but I plan to in the next couple weeks.
Good.
So,
Okay, where'd John go?
town of Lisbon, I believe, as
He
a
went-
facilities director.
Finance, finance.
But, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not the same thing.
Finance director for the Board of Education, as I understand it.
Yes.
Very interesting. Such, okay,
And just one more thing, the replacement is Taryn Erb, who used to work for the town of Old Saybrook. And then she went on looking for bigger and better things to town of Guilford and was very involved with their Parks and Rec department. She is a super hire, and Ray, she's been in her position about a month now, and Ray Allen said to me today, exceeding expectations, just like he thought she would.
cool. It's always good to hear. Okay, comments from any board members? Hearing none, did we get a public? We did not have public. Carol, you have anything you want to? No. No comments from the chair, so I'll seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Daryl, thank you very much. Really do appreciate not only tonight, but all the work that you do.